Hey everybody, Jay here with a bit of a public service announcement. We wanted to let all of our loyal listeners know that the Agile Uprising is co-sponsoring the upcoming 12th annual Give Thanks for Scrum event produced by Agile Boston. This event is going to have the keynote speaker of Agile's own Jeff Sutherland with a QA panel in the afternoon, and as well as a host of other speakers and presenters. This event runs at 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Tuesday, November 24th, and of course it is online. For more information, including tickets, please go to www.agileboston.org/give-thanks-for-scrum-2020. And again, we'll have a link to this in the show notes. Thanks again, all, and enjoy the show.
This is Troy McGinnis, and you're listening to the Agile Uprising podcast.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. I'm not your host, Jay Hrckso. Joined with me are good friends of mine, Andrew Leff.
I'm not your host either.
Mike Caddell.
Howdy, y'all.
And Jonathan Schneider.
Howdy, howdy.
And we are, so this is where things get interesting. John is actually hosting tonight's episode based upon a conversation we had. The loose topic is old dogs, new tricks. And the question on the floor is leadership experience an arbiter of transformation success? And John, I am ceding the comm to you. Mr. Spock, you have the comm.
This was a great topic, and it obviously spun from our AU Discord. So if you're not in our AU Discord, please get a plug in there. But the topic that we're going to frame for you guys today is there a perception that having a good leadership background and past completion of driving programs and requiring process improvement changes is a good enough skill set to drive culture movement transformation? And that's the key part here. We're going to talk a lot about culture transformation. So I'm going to open it up by kind of explaining a little bit about what's trending today for Agile and what it really means to do that in reference to culture movement transformation, and see if Mike, Andrew, and Jay, you guys align with that. So let me start by reading a little bit about what's trending, and I'll get your reactions on, do you agree? How do you feel? So let's dig into it a little. So what's trending? What isn't trending in the Agile space? We got culture is still a thing. And I'm sure you guys are like, of course. Well, culture is still a thing. The highest ranked challenges to adopting and scaling Agile to continue to be related to organizational culture. General organizational resistance to change, inadequate management, support and sponsorship, and organizational culture at odds with Agile values remain at the top 5 challenges. So culture is still a thing. That's one. Number 2, Scrum and SAFe reigns supreme. Scrum is the most widely practiced Agile method framework, with at least 75% of respondents practicing Scrum at hybrid or include Scrum. SAFe is again the scaling framework of choice, leading with 35% of people saying this is their choice. So Scrum and SAFe reign supreme. That's number 2. And then the number 3 is Agile empowers adaptability and visibility. This year, again, the ability to manage changing priorities and project visibility are the top 2 capabilities reported as having improved as a result of Agile implementation. So that's what's trending today. So in summary, culture's still a thing, Scrum and SAFe are supreme, and visibility and adaptability are the 3 things. You guys are fairly experienced. You guys see culture change. I'm going to open it up with you, Andrew. What are your thoughts on those 3?
My goodness. There is definitely not enough time to unpack all of those, but great opening and great way to prime the pump here. So my reaction to all of that is we don't take enough time to understand the human systems in the organization and really focus on building people as opposed to delivering software or whatever. So that to me is part of the influence to prime the pump, to use that term again, to influence culture change, right? So how do you start to lead through that change and be vulnerable to identify where the culture is hurting? I don't think anybody talks to you. I have yet to see a leader step up on the stage, address a town hall and be like, wow, we're really mean to each other, or we do this, or we're really bad at this, or here's a blind spot from our human systems, right? Like we have lousy middle management, or we have dictators. So being really transparent about that, I'm obviously embellishing quite a bit, but taking culture change and truly putting a plan to it. Not that, strategy eats culture for breakfast. We hear that all the time, but how do you start putting that and prioritizing that without just being very anemic? So I'll pause there.
Isn't it the other way around? Culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry.
But I mean, either way, right? Because if you have, I mean, when I think strategy, I also think systemic.
No, it's culture
right?
eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. But if your systemic strategy is that strong, it basically doesn't it warp the culture around itself. You know what I mean? Like it's the cart before the horse sort of thing. And I kind of sort of stole the mic from you, Leff. So when I hear like culture, the first thing that pops to mind is everybody's favorite Agile curmudgeon, Dave Snowden, where he says, when all else fails, blame culture or mindset. And he's being snarky, but he's kind of right too. That is a bit easy to say, oh, well, this transformation is totally belly up, millions in, well, we just can't change the culture, right? But then when I think about some of the crap that I shouldn't say crap that I've read, but some of the stuff that I've read, I do think culture change is possible in an organization. I am genuinely curious if anyone's seen successful culture transformation at organizations of scale and size. And by that, I mean massive international conglomerate type, 20,000 people plus, right? Is there really a success story out there? And what does that success story look like? Scrum and Safe are obviously the big dogs. Safe isn't going anywhere. It's quickly becoming the PMP, PMI, PMBOK of Agile. We're okay with that. It is what it is. Adaptability and visibility, I agree with that statement in the sense that that's what everybody says why they want to do the Agile, to quote Johanna Roth, the Agile. But I do think culture change is hard. It's hard to measure. It's hard to put a accurate goal to say this is where we want to be, because if you knew where you wanted to be, you'd be there already, right? If teams knew how to do good DevOps, they'd be doing it already, right? So I think one of the reasons this culture transformation lever thing fails is to your point, Leff, we forget about the people that are sitting behind it. And it's not as simple as changing a policy or changing a process to make it work.
And just one thing to add on to that, Jay, I agree with what you stated. I would almost, gosh, I can't believe I'm going to say. So to me, it's a way to sell things. Hey, we can bolt on culture change to your transformation, right? So to me, it's buzzwordy, it's slick, it's sexy. Every company has culture, so it's instant connection. I think that's where a lot of these bolt-ons come on. And truly, to me, if I was in a leadership position, culture would mean something very different from my perspective. So I'm wondering if any of that adds a layer of complication, right? So I don't want to steal the mic all night. So I'm curious what Mike and John want to, chat about in this regard.
What do you think, Mike?
Kind of working my way backwards. Agile empowers adaptability and visibility. Like Jay said, that's everybody says, yeah, that's it, and it's legit. Last 3 clients I've worked with, I've seen measurable progress and improvement because the visibility into work and the state of work and the state of the business was improved, kind of up and down. So yeah, those are positive things that we can get, and we can do it with small A Agile instead of big A Agiles. I believe Scrum and Safe reigns supreme. I guess it's hard to argue with that, though. I will say that I am finding success with other methods, and not just Scrum and Safe, using elements of them. But I also think that because Scrum and Safe have such brand name recognition that leads to a lot of the cargo cult kind of behavior. And that's why I'm finding myself drawn more to some different ways, because I can have different kind of conversations that way. But the real meat of the topic, culture. I made some notes while Jay and Leff were talking. One of the things that I've experienced is that if you go to an organization or to somebody in your organization and say, we need to change the culture, you're kind of insulting them, right? And changing culture, it's when somebody says we need to change the culture. I've seen it from everywhere from a 50-person Boy Scout troop to a 20,000 person enterprise. When you say we're going to change the culture, you're kind of like doing a waterfall attempt at change, because culture is best described as the way we do things here. And so what's worked in my experience is you change culture by way of small things, and one of the most impactful two most impactful things that help change culture, I found, we use and the way we make decisions. So if we want to impact culture without insulting people or creating a successories poster for the scrap heap, I found working small bits and paying exquisite attention to language is kind of where there's a path to progress.
So you bring up a good point, though, Mike. You just said language, right? You just said language, right? Language is important. And that ties back to, I think, where Leff was kind of going when he said, we bolt on culture as a way to sell things. I think that C word is a very strong word. It comes with a lot of connotation, right? And when I think about the triune brain, right, the human brain, and how we have those three brains all nested on top of one another, when you see that word culture, immediately my mammalian brain starts firing, right? Because that's the part of me that wants to belong. That's the part of me that forms, interrelated systems via cultural memes and all that sort of stuff, like all that stuff we talked about in the Lucifer principle. I think, Leff, you're onto something. It definitely is. It's thrown in as like a bolt-on, like, hey, buy 4 and get 1 free. Not realizing that 1 free is the one that will actually like set your car on fire and, ruin your marriage. But I also think that subconsciously it's sold because it does hit that part of your brain that makes you think.
Yeah. So based off that feedback from you guys, I agree entirely. I have almost nothing to add. You guys put great comments to that. What I will say is, based off what you guys were saying with, almost like a selling mechanism, or there's other things out there, I think you guys all touched on and didn't argue that they weren't important, but there's definitely some nuanced things in there. So keep in mind, the topic was definitely good, and this is good to get a foundation of your guys' thoughts on these trending patterns, because we want to revisit them when we say the topic at hand, which is leaders that don't necessarily have that as their foreground way of making change, which is culture driven. How do they do that today? So the next part I want to pivot to is, well, let's look at a little bit of what people are saying, how much experience they even have with Agile practices. And this came from the Agile survey, where they had thousands, tens of thousands, I believe, people respond, all the way from C-levels to teams. And just in 2019 alone, still, we're talking people with 1 year less experience, 10%, 1 to 2 years, 23%, 3 to 5 years of experience with Agile, 34%, which is the highest number. And then 5+ years is 27%. Those numbers are not big. And that's the positive. That experience alone is not very high. And those are people that are basically saying, I've done Agile. That doesn't mean they did it well or good either. It just means they've done it. So, and there's more to this data-wise, but does this have something to do with leaders and their experience and what their perception is of Agile? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think it does. One of the interesting conversations, this might be in a little bit of a side, but it ties back. One of the conversations I've had with, and I forget where we had this, I forget who I was talking to, where they said, how come all of a sudden now companies are into the Agile monster. They're into Agile now, whereas maybe before they weren't. And somebody made the remark that, well, the old stalwarts have finally retired, right? So there's an old saying that in academia, science advances one dead body at a time. Because if Jonathan has built an entire career believing that, grass is blue, and he has published all these papers, he is not going to change his mind until he dies. And then somebody says, hey, that guy was wrong. The grass is green. Where was I going with this? So I've had the conversation with a bunch of people where we talk about how, we know that in order to empower successful change, culture or not, the leadership people need to exemplify the behaviors and the attitudes that they're looking for out of their people. And if you've built an entire career, grass is blue, it's very unlikely that you're going to realize grass is green. And I make the tie to the 2008 financial crisis, right? What happened? People's 401ks, their retirement plans were wiped out virtually overnight. So you have an entire generation of people, my dad's generation, right, who should be retired. All rights and purposes should be retired. They haven't moved on yet because they're still trying to build up that nest egg to be able to retire. So think about the cascading effect of that downwards. And what I mean, and how that ties to this conversation is we don't have many people in positions of leadership or influence. I'm talking like C-level or C-1 that are Agile natives, that have grown up as a scrum master, come to age as a product owner, have been on a development team working in an iterative model. So not only are you asking people of this higher strata, talk about the layer cake, right? Less oxygen up there. You're asking them to lead a change that they may not necessarily grok at an almost cellular level, and that could be part of the problem.
Yeah, I want to hear Leff and Mike on that too, but I want to add real quick. It's also interesting when you said they should have been retired. I'm also thinking, well, maybe they're just honestly sticking around to make sure they recoup their finances. So they're just one of those.
That's really what it is.
I'm here for my job, basically. So very interesting. Mike, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, just tacking on to Jay's thought. This is a conversation I've had many times with different leaders in just broaching the subject of changing the way their organizations function. And I had one guy who's one of the CTOs of a large bank say to me, "This works. I know it works. I know how it works, and I'm made my career doing this, and I'm not really interested in doing something else." And then what he said is, "Here, you can go work with this one group, and when you can show me metrics and data that prove that this works, then I'll talk about doing it in someplace other than this one experiment." So, it's an understandable reaction. Kind of goes back to Leff's point. We have to think about this from a human system perspective. If I've gotten to a level of some influence, authority, security, making X amount of money, whatever metric you want to use, I've gotten to where I am by doing something one way. You got to show me why it's going to be to my advantage to behave differently. Otherwise, I'm probably not interested.
Interesting.
So one of the other interesting factual things here that I put in here for you guys as an infographic to help you out too is, personally, I've been a software developer, and we are an interesting bunch when it comes to cultural, how we are. A lot of people view us as very, independent. We're not very, we're introverted, not extroverted, a lot of those type of stereotypes. And yeah, some of that's a little true, but when you look at the organizations that are practicing Agile, which by the way is very much a extroverted like framework, they communication, collaboration, visibility, a lot of bonding, team, 37% are software engineering, IT. It's like the two most dominant areas that practice Agile are the most anti kind of cultural Agile team. It's very strange how that kind of worked out. And then the most prominent areas where you would think they were closest to the customer that Agile promotes, sales and HR, are actually some of the lower percentages that are practicing Agile, embracing it. So I just thought that was an interesting statistic, especially with the cultural movement that the leaders need to have. Any other thoughts on the duration? I can poke the bear on the next topic. I wanted to hear if anyone else had thoughts.
What do you think, Leff?
And I can chime in on a quick tidbit of it. Just, I think we talked about this before we even started recording the show, this preconceived notion, right? I have position of leader, title of leader. There's a set of expectations that come with that word. And then on the flip side, we all have been raised a certain way, right? One of the things we were taught in school is to win, right? We do things we want to win. Our leadership may have been taught by poor leaders, right? Like we replicate the patterns because patterns make us feel comfortable and it becomes predictable, and we find comfort in being predictable, or things that are predictable, not things that we can't predict. So I don't know if we're empathetic enough to ask the question, hey leader, what can I do to help? And I'm not sure leadership shows the vulnerability to accept it. So to me, it's as we're raised as, children to adulthood, there's certain things that we're ingrained. We have our own personal cultures. How does that translate into leadership? And how do you still, we want more of I don't want to say soft, but someone that has a heart in a way that can connect and build trust fairly quick with people and organizations to inspire. So if you don't have that, to me, that mindset of inspiring and thrive and not just be up there as a used car salesman, culture will resist, and leadership may not be enough to change it, right? It may not, we all say it because I think that, again, as Agilists, we're conditioned to talk about certain things in a way. So it's interesting to hear how resistant sometimes things feel, and we put a lot of that blame on leadership. And I'm not sure, I've seen two sides of it. So I can be empathetic, but I can also be extremely critical because I've seen the poor side of leadership more so than not.
Very interesting. And I always find it also interesting, and I don't know if you guys caught it, but one of the top 5 challenges in culture is still a thing trending was making sure the organization can align to the Agile values. And I was like, well, that's pretty core. So if you're struggling there. And we'll get to this in a sec. There's a topic that calls out some of the motivations that actually are misguided. But actually, let's jump to that because that actually is a good segue. So some of the reasons that motivates people to even want to do this transformation. So like you guys said, a lot of people like to hear adaptability and visibility. They like to hear that they want to be able to inspect and adapt. They want to do all these things that are, you guys mentioned it, either salesy, they're buzzwordy, but they do have meaning. If they actually are done well, they do have some meaning. But you look at the top things for what's motivating them, and people voted accelerate software delivery, enhance ability to manage changing priorities, increase productivity. Those are very process direct things. And a lot of the times, if I'm a developer and someone's telling me, well, we have to do this so we can accelerate software delivery, that's not really a great what's in it for me. That's a weird culture motivator. Improve business alignment, enhance software quality. Those are great for the leaders that get great stocks and bonuses that get performance managed on that. But for the greater masses of people that really are your culture, I'm not quite so sure. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Yeah.
When you said what's in it for me, I just thought, I just had a random thought. Would it be possible to sell an organization on an Agile transformation with the entire motivating goal of, it's going to make your life easier? Would that work?
Doesn't work. No,
it doesn't work.
No, because again, it's and when you said this, it's what's in it for me. I like it. I felt, oh, don't say that, because that's what we don't want, right? We don't want people to think what's in it for me. So it's that lack of teaming the team sport. So I didn't mean to jump, but it just, when you said that, what's in it for me, I'm like, ah. But Jay, I've tried to approach it from that perspective, and it sounds great and it sounds good for the moment, but people don't latch on to that. How do you sell that? I can't put a statement of work together in the way that I need to be billable in that sense. So to me, there's an imbalance, right? Like, I love the squishiness of all of this, and I use squishy in a good way. I love the heartfelt meaning behind what we do. It's why I love what I do, and continue to stay very focused in trying, because I believe one person at a time. I struggle with with going in and being able to feel that way and absorb the pain of an organization that can't do that, because we want them to, we can reflect it. But what is it about what you just said that is such a challenge to either lead, abide by, honor, commit to, align it to a goal? You can roadmap it. I don't know. I don't know what the fear is or apprehension or reservation. So I'd love to hear maybe someone else has a enlightening thought on that.
What do you think, Mike?
Selling an entire transformation on, your life will suck less, to quote our friend Ben, probably won't be sufficient. It's like necessary, but not sufficient. In part because going back to what I was saying earlier, most people are not going to be willing to flip the tables, so to speak, to the extent that is needed to get transformative change that we aspire to make available to our companies and our clients on just that. You got to have more. There's got to be more to it than that. You got to understand how it's going to make the organization, make things better for the organization. The dollar is going to come into it at some point, because there's rows and columns people out there, no matter what, that have a say in this. So it's got to be. You have to look at it from a lot of different dimensions, and it has to really resonate to something that the organization is going to value. Otherwise, you're not gonna get the uptake. But I want to come back to something, to John's original question, which was the reasons for taking on any sort of agile adoption, transformation, faster software delivery and those things. What, as you were reading those, John, what was running through my head was, those are kind of like leading indicators of what I suspect are the real benefits and the real motives. So why do we want to deliver software faster? So we can have put out more points in a month or in a PI or whatever. No, we want to deliver software faster because we got to stay. We need to try to keep up with our competitors so that we can do whatever. Depends on your business context. If I go back to Peter Merrill's stuff, and the idea that if your business isn't accelerating, it's declining, and you got to be ready to find the next thing that's going to help bring your business forward. It may be a bit extreme, and I'm sure some folks, I know when I first heard it, I had a visceral reaction. It's like, well, what do you mean? But the point underneath that is that underneath all this, I suspect if we look closely, we'll find the motivations are to be able to respond to different circumstances more nimbly, so that fill in the blank, higher EBITDA, keep the company in business, win in the market, so to speak. I hate that term, win in the market, but yeah.
So I'm gonna poke the bear a little here and play positive side on the people that maybe are the older people that have some traditional leadership skills here. So going back to our core question we started with, right, where we're really challenging and saying we have good leadership, or at least good leadership background from previous ways of how they led, and challenging if that not, or having the skill set of culture movement or lacking that would inhibit them for being a good leader today in today's leadership stance, right? So let's think about what good leaders did almost prior to agile transformations and what they did then. Because a lot of what they did, and I'll start by saying, it probably would be, what is my system? What are my people doing? How do I change processes to think a different way? And it was very much a Six Sigma type lean approach, maybe most likely, where it was, my people think this way, and I think I can make them think differently if I change these processes, reorg this way, have these leaders influence downward by making them think this way. That was usually the way change occurred. And it was very slow. It was very top down, and it was very controlled. And that's where most leadership that I believe today that doesn't understand cultural movement is still thinking that that's the best way for success because that's the pattern in the past, how change occurred. So with today, we preach a lot about teams, autonomy, having them be empowered closer to the customer. Those are drastic opposite to that leadership style in the past. So if you look at it from their perspective, why would they listen to us? I mean, they had success for 15, 20, 30 years, right? Like you guys were saying, they've had success. And now we have people that barely have 5 years experience in Agile saying, no, this is a better way of working due to the statistics, right? Because not many people have a lot of experience in Agile according to the statistics. So, I mean, the numbers will tell them this doesn't make sense. How can something that's been working for 20 or 30 years be dwarfed all of a sudden by something with 5 or less years of practical experience? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I agree 100%. And I agree because Leff started off talking about empathy, and I do feel empathetic to these type of leaders. To your point, John, like you said, they got to where they are being successful delivery expediters, right? That's most companies. That's how you get promoted. You're successful in your project work. You keep delivering. You climb the ladder. You climb the layer cake. You take a little less shit. Eventually you forget what shit tastes like. Welcome to the layer cake, blah, 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 blah. However, we got to take it back to the fact that these leaders, right, these senior people, right, these MBAs, it's all based on, this is where I get on a little bit of a soapbox, so if I get too long, hit the dump button. Scientific management, right? Taylor wrote that book in 1911. Mm-hmm. The Principles of Scientific Management was written in 1911. Every major management fad since then has been based upon some subset of Taylorism, TQM, all workout, all that sort of stuff. And Taylorism is based upon the fundamental idea, which made sense in manufacturing. It doesn't make sense with heuristic knowledge work, that resources are fungible. I swap Leff with Mike. I swap Mike with Jay. I swap Jay with John. You know, we're just pulling levers. We're literally meat widgets, right? So when it comes to what we do in knowledge work, that's not the case anymore. So you have people who don't even, I'm going to quote Evolve Agility here. So I can rug it in Mike Caddell's face. He's working on this book for 9 months. You have to, Michael Hammond talks about, you need to create that safe environment of holding, right? You need to create that environment where you are comfortable to acknowledge that, hey, maybe there's a better way of working. But you have people who have gotten to the level, the stratification that they've gotten to, based upon like, why would I want to change? It always, like Mike said, it always worked for me. Why do I need to change? And it's not their fault because it really is like a blind spot, right? And I'd be curious to see what is the Wharton MBA program? What is the Harvard MBA program? What do they teach as far as leadership and management? Are they still teaching Taylorism? Are they still teaching this stuff around, people being fungible, right? Back to the Craig Larman meat widgets? Or are they teaching the Daniel Pink stuff? Are they teaching the stuff around integral theory and consent over consensus and all that sort of stuff? I don't think so. And I think maybe that's part of the problem. Like I'm not making excuses, but I'm trying to be empathetic where whenever someone says something or does something I don't understand, I try to understand where that remark or action came from. And a lot of these people who, to your point, John, and taking us whole circle, right? We're asking them to lead a transformation into a way of working that they are not even remotely comfortable with. And based on their success is built on the back of doing things in an entirely different way. So maybe the question should be, are we being a little bit insensitive to their maybe perceived shortcomings?
Yeah, and before I'll get Mike and Leff's opinion on that, I will make a note here to say, reach out to these very prestigious MBA areas and see if they want to be a podcast guest to see if they get their thoughts, because that'd be a great discussion.
Yeah.
So
what are you jabronis teaching?
Exactly. Yeah. Educate us. Yeah. So Leff, Mike, any opinion?
Yeah, I mean,
Leff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have some strong opinions about it. I think, again, I don't know why this just keeps popping into my head, but it's the TED talk around leadership is the first follower. So it's the crazy dancing first follower. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but someone dancing without their shirt. It was the person that jumped in behind them that started the movement. So to me, whether you're in a position of leadership or not, you have the ability to create a movement, right? If we codify it and say, build that guiding coalition, where's the visioning? Where's the inspiration? Where is the the actual, I want to walk through a burning building mentality. Like literally, I believe in that person so much that if they tell me to walk through a burning building, I will. So I don't know where the disconnect is. And we're all saying different things, but I think we're all alluding to when a leader top down comes in and says, I'm going to change culture, or that's our initiative, it stalls. And when the bottom up faction, right, teams delivering, doing agile ways of working, it stalls when it hits, it gets squished in the middle. And I'm not calling out middle management, but in general, people typically struggle with managing up due to the way that we're raised in the corporate system, that privilege and rank has the ability to cut off my money supply that will hurt me from living, right? Mm-hmm. So these are human primal kind of elements that
mm-hmm.
It's really hard to put that expectation on anybody. So I like to say, don't fuck with my money, excuse my French, but don't screw with my money. So I can be as risky as I want, but yeah, sorry, we can edit it in post. But you get what I'm saying, right? And I don't actually swear on these too much, but I do feel that strongly is just, we all need to be paid. So in any case, I think that there's this weird kind of nuance that we don't have leadership being inspirational. It feels very antiseptic. This could be a reflection of the landscape we're in with all the things that go on from an HR perspective, how we've had to sanitize a lot of stuff. So I think it's a reflection in a lot of things too. So let's not discount the current state of affairs and think that everything's built off the past. Our current environment is challenging to lead in, and I'm not sure that we've given enough grace in that space either.
You actually touched on something that's interesting too, and I want to hear your thoughts, Mike, but a lot of coaches, and they asked some questions about this in some after meetups in my area, and someone that was savvy asked the question, where are your guys' home bases in your areas that you help consult? Or are you in IT? Are you in digital? Are you in finance? Where are you coaching? And the ones that actually said that my home base is in HR were the happiest in their transformations because they had the most solid set of people that could influence the actual people change and things that people were most fearful of, goals, performance, salaries. They were with the team that already influenced that the heaviest.
Interesting.
So that's a potential topic to unpack.
Yeah.
Is the secret to agile success? You've been talking to my boy all wrong. Should we be starting in HR? Right? That's a whole different question for a different episode.
Yeah.
Yes. And believe it or not, HR leadership is a very big hot topic actually. And that's why this kind of bled into this is a lot of the leadership and past experiences that actually influence and help drive it the most in my experience have been people from chief human resource officers and others that have had successful people change and actually are really good agile transformation people and don't even realize it because they've just had success making change in other ways that aren't agile related, taxonomy and frameworks. I just thought it was amusing.
But if they're still identified as HR, there's a deeper problem.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
And it's not human resources; it's human operations, right? Because then they're just human
people operations or
people
whatever.
Meat widget operations. Okay.
So I want to bring up another side of this that's a little interesting too, because there's a statistic in here about distributed teams. And now this was obviously brought up before COVID. So these statistics are extremely high, even though they were high to begin with. So we're already talking about that you have to get very personal with these people. You have to be very close with them. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand what they're going through. You have to, it was already hard before. And then you start working with them and realize you have distributed teams. You have multiple time zones. And now it becomes super complex. Then COVID hit. Then you got just basically everybody remote. Now, this is where it becomes really interesting because I think if Myrm was on this podcast, he would agree. We're all terrible at doing this because we haven't gone through this before. I think we've heard that message very clear, and he's not wrong. So I will give you a plug, Myrm. Well done. Job well done. But that's the only one you'll get. So, but the only thing that I will say, though, is the distributed team model now even stresses more about our leadership and old school tricks that they have that they were successful or even more challenged in today's world more than ever. Because saying digitally savvy and how to remotely drive morale and drive people, that's a skill that's hard to have in begin with. But now trying to teach that to people that have these older skill sets, I mean, now it's just an even bigger barrier. I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on the distributed teams, how to make that work. And that's a complex topic, but it definitely coincides.
I'll kick that one off and then pass the torch. Couple thoughts. In my mind and in my work, I make a distinction between distributed teams and what some people call dislocated teams. So when you've got people in, India, Russia, the UK, New York, and Denver, you're severely constrained in what you can do as a true team. So if that is your reality, COVID's not made it any worse. Life kind of sucks already to a certain extent. So, and you got to understand that your access to the benefits of a well functioning team are going to be limited because of that. And you just got to hope that whatever cost arbitrage you're getting is worth it. I kind of question that math, but hey, to each their own. But a distributed team, I think, COVID has the COVID-19 pushing everybody in our world remotely. First of all, I just got to say, we are privileged beyond description to be able to work like this. My guy lives across the street is a county sheriff. Every morning I see him coming home from work when I'm out for my morning walk. And I'm just like, thank God this guy made it home tonight or this morning. So, I appreciate how privileged we are to have this ability to basically kind of sit on the sidelines. But COVID, that everybody all of a sudden being remote for a long time, has got the potential to be disruptive in a good way, in that some people will be inspired or forced or triggered to learn better ways of keeping in touch with people and becoming better remote managers. And other people are going to just, it's going to cause them to tap out. I'm done, can't. And then there'll be others that'll kind of survive. And then when it's safe again, all right, come on back into the office. I read something that in September, JP Morgan Chase or somebody like that was going to bring like half the traders back to the floor in New York City or something. I don't know how true that is, but
they rushed everybody back in, and they had 2 cases within like a week, and then they sent everybody home. Yeah, which is still better than Ray Dalio in Bridgewater, where they put tents outside in the parking lot, and they have their traders working outside in tents.
Yeah, but so I think it's an opportunity. And it goes back to the individual. So somebody, a person is going to learn and grow when they're open and ready, and until that person is ready to make some vertical space to grow and learn new skills, if you will. It's gonna be tough.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Sorry if I went a little long there. Just if you can't tell, that's something I got some passion over.
No, it's an interesting topic, and definitely I'll play the manager that wants to solve this the easy way. Where it's like, oh, you don't know how to remotely manage. It seems like you're here's a training course. It's 2 hours. You'll be effective now. Don't worry. This is how. And that's usually the typical way they solve these things. And it's true. And there's some merit to it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, having that knowledge, but I think the rule of thumb is people retain 10% of the knowledge in a training session that they take, and everything else is learned by doing. So leadership really, and I think COVID has really set expectations there, because COVID was bigger than just you're working remotely now. It was a way bigger impact than that. And I think people realize that now. So I think time heals all wounds, and I think people are starting to adjust. But I think we're really getting in that awkward point where okay, I think enough time's passed. My leaders really should know how to manage this now. And some companies are starting to have that turning point where, hey, I understand we're remote and we're still going through COVID, but we really do need to make progress to get back on traction, or we are going to have to start making budget cuts still. We are going to have to start doing that. So leaders are really having to try and be unique and figure these things out. And it is pressure. I mean, you're right. Some people are tapping out. Some people just aren't fit to do it in the time and expectations they're expecting them to do it. That's the key part. The expectations are high. So I'm curious if Leff or Mike, if you want to add more.
Just real quick, and then hand the baton to Leff. I remember back at the beginning of this, we were doing a podcast, and Colleen had a real insightful statement, as she typically does. So it's like, we're not working at home during a pandemic. We're at home trying to survive and work during a pandemic. So it's it's just, and I'm apologies, I didn't get the words exactly right, but hopefully the sentiment comes across. So I'm sorry, Leff.
Yeah, no, and I agree with the majority of what you said, Mike, and I think that's what gets exposed. It's just like Agile or any change, right? Or we'll use Agile as the change agent. Is going in and you're going to amplify all the workarounds that you had in place. So when you talk about these big distributed teams, and I am well aware of all the distribution that goes on, and I like the dislocation comment, because they weren't functional. Other people may have had to pick up the slack. So, or had to deal with, the chase the sunset development type cycles. So I think that we're seeing the imbalances in organizations now that we're all level. There's a leveling that happened. We're all working remote. So, with non-essential work. So there's a leveling that goes on. So you're going to see a lot of exposure and fracture in the systems that have been holding companies together, such as certain culturalistic behaviors. And I think leadership in some of the places that I'm exposed to has shown up different and is now listening, because they don't have their, single throats to choke at this point, because everyone's on a heightened state. Everyone has a sense of urgency. Everyone's fearful of losing their job. So I think that there is a bit of level setting that has happened with COVID, with a massive reset. Not that I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness, but there's part of me that is like, wow, some of this is shaking things up in a way that will pan out, hopefully in a positive manner, and help us evolve and articulate change. You can't prepare for COVID. We never were prepared. We're prepared to accommodate the changes that need to happen to live in a different world now. So I think that that's something that we will want to capitalize from all the data that we're getting around all the changes we've had to make with no prep. It's what we talk about at work all the time. Change is why try and harness, stop it. You're not, it's happening. So Jay, your thoughts?
I don't want to take too much time and just echo what you said, but I think you're right. I think both you and Mike made good points. I love the idea of it dislocated. To your point, Leff, where you said, leadership has shown up different. And I'm trying to be optimistic here, but maybe one of the positive things that comes out of this whole, COVID-19 disaster is the emperors who had no clothes as far as leadership goes. Maybe this is where they finally get exposed. Like if you led through fear and through lead pipe cruelty and through, running around and grabbing that person and saying, you need to do this now, maybe now you got exposed as somebody who just bullied people into delivery, because you can't do that now. Because if you're bullying me on a Zoom meeting, dude, I got Pornhub open in the other monitor. You can say whatever you want. I'm not even listening. So, by the way, for anybody who's listening to me that works in I can't, because it won't make it through the web filter. My point being is you can only be so scary through a WebEx, right? You can only be so imposing through you're talking to a bunch of people who probably don't even have pants on. So you really can't use that lead pipe swinging it around, because whatever.
Yeah.
You're not
I can still threaten your job and threaten your livelihood.
True, but yeah.
So let me let me start bringing it home a little bit to get to some, and I'll ask one more thing, and this is going to be more around the challenges that are people experiencing during the Agile adoption, because this will be really key when we say, well, these people that we might say have older leadership styles, different ways of doing things that are now impacting this. Well, this is the challenges that people are experiencing. And then when you listen to these, I want you guys to really think, does leadership have this ability to drive this? Do we feel confident that they're learning it, or that we're doing the right things for them to learn it? And so I'll read off to the top 5 or so. General organizational resistance to change. Top 1, not enough leadership participation. Inconsistent processes and practices across teams. Organizational culture at odds with Agile values. Inadequate management support and sponsorship. Those are some big things that are challenges. And that's a big, tall order. And Leff, you were already saying these things earlier on. That is like very hard to like get buy-in on and drive in. And to some extent, I mean, it's not really practical. It's just very sales pitchy. It sounds great and you can add it on, but yet those are the biggest challenges.
So to quote a friend of ours who I don't think he can be named due to his current work situation. We can't call him by his name, but we're just going to refer to him as Mr. Wolf, Winston Wolf. His quote was, we were talking about this, the challenges experienced when adopting and scaling Agile. And his response was, I'm going to call bullshit. And I'm going to read it verbatim. Okay. While Daniel Pink may not agree, I'll bet you could incentivize number one being the general organizational resistance to change. The remark was, do it like this. People who successfully make the shift get a 30% increase in compensation. People who don't get a 30% decrease. If half the organization does something, you're net on the same payroll. If more than half figure it out, you increase revenue and decrease waste. This is a win-win. And then he does a carriage return and he goes, this is why I shouldn't be left in charge. So while he kind of did it as like a snarky, off the cuff statement, I think he was onto something with the idea of incentivization, right? How do you incentivize somebody to say, Mike and I took a class earlier today where everybody in the room, when we talked about difficulties of transformation, a lot of us had the same complaint, is that there is no burning bush, burning desire, burning bush. No, burning bush is Moses.
Burning platform.
Right? Burning platform, right? Burning bush is,
yes. Burning bush is Moses in the Bible, yeah.
Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors here. I'm going to keep going. But there is no burning platform. And the burning platform is an incentive, right? We got to get this fixed before it, flames out and kills all of us. But incentivizing a culture shift, how does one even start to think about doing that? Because how do I prove you, when you say you're Agile, you're actually Agile? You know what I mean? Maybe I'm getting, lost in my own navel gazing here. Too many double nickel nocturnal creatures in, but
I think the only thing I would challenge that statement about incentivizing it is, does it stick? Or do you get the needle to move and then it's the rubber band effect? It snaps right back after they've gotten the carrot, right? So I haven't seen, listen, I'm incented by money as well. Like that's how I pay for stuff. That's how I live. So, but my feeling is I much rather prefer to have pride in what I'm doing, to feel good about it, because the money, I'm never going to have enough money, but I'll take all the pride I can get.
Yeah, I remember having some conversations with developers, other people, when I actually managing them about compensation. And sometimes they were knocking it out of the park, doing a great job. And sure enough, they're stressed, they're overworked, they're working 60 hours a week. And of course, management goes, you've done such a great job. We're going to give you more responsibility, but don't worry, we'll pay you more. And that person's like, but I'm miserable. Like, I don't care if you give me 30 more grand. I'm thinking of still leaving. So that's why the incentive thing is a little tricky, because sometimes incentive means, what if I took away 10 hours out of your week? Well, that's a different incentive. Now that's a different way to reach people. So I do like the term of incentive, but compensation is something that's a little tricky. So.
Yeah, you're right. We can't make there's a false equivalency of incentive with compensation, right? Because, and honestly, lazy incentivization is, oh, Mike, you're doing a great job. You had hair at the beginning of the month. Now you don't. You know what? We'll give you another 40 grand. That's a lazy incentivization because it takes the company nothing to throw 40 grand at Mike, right?
Right.
In the grander scheme of things, it doesn't. And yet here is Mike losing his mind. Now, I don't think Mike would turn down 40 grand for a month, but
Depends on what I had to
Turn
do
down
for
40 grand?
it. That depends. But you kind of to put a bit of an exclamation mark on that. The places where I've seen sustainable change take root were not focused on Agile per se. Some of us on the Discord have shared this thought is, in day-to-day, I rarely use the word Agile. I kind of cringe when people, Agile, say, but what I rather talk with people about is how to make their work, their life, their company more awesome. And so, and to the incentive thing, money works to a certain point and then until it doesn't. But each person is driven and incented differently. So this is kind of like ground combat, one hill at a time, one person at a time. I think Leff may have said that earlier. So it requires people working with other people to understand what motivates them and then figure out how to adapt the whole ecosystem to what's going to motivate that person. A specific example would be, maybe John is really motivated by the ability to work with, some new programming language. Most people are motivated by legitimate, specific, earned praise. People care about what their boss asks them about. So if you want to incent people, get their bosses asking them good questions, questions about outcomes, questions about what's getting in their way, and reinforcing why the company's trying to behave differently. Those kind of incentives are the ones that I've seen start to create sustainable change.
Yeah, and I will say some of the incentives that are, I will admit, I was ignorant and not really a participant earlier in my career, but there are a lot of people that do a lot of good corporate social things, or they get involved, and you see that, and it's like, well, it's not really for me. I mean, that's just community stuff. But when you really do it and you say, like, this brand of your company just donated toys, they did this for these kids, they did this, that also helps incentivize people because it gives them some greater purpose than I just moved the earnings and sales, for my stock to go higher. No, you actually made impact to people. So there's a real reason why some of those exist well, to incentivize people for why their company does good. So there's a lot of that too. And I think you're right, Mike. I think you're hitting on a lot of good stuff there. Jay or Leff, any comments on that?
I think my comment would be, you have to believe in people. I know that sounds weird, but I truly believe that you have to believe in people, and you have to find the right, and you have to want to believe that you can help them be better. So, standing on I didn't get to where I am without standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I don't see further. I just have been able to stand on the shoulder of giants. So I'm a big Zig Ziglar fan. I really like the way that he talks about how to connect with people as well. So how do we lift people up in that way? How does leadership make that a focus point? And how do they build a next layer of leadership within that mindset to continue to cultivate that type of behavior is hard. I mean, you really have to have somebody special. And I believe that not everyone possesses that quality to be that brave and to take on that much risk and know that no matter what the outcome is, they put a ding in the universe, right? Like Steve Jobs said, that's how did they impact one person's life and be satisfied with knowing that they've inspired the next person to go do the same.
Sounds a lot like servant leadership to me. Good. That's a good way to put it, though. I will say, with the couple minutes left, I want to get some closing thoughts from everybody. So I want to hear, Mike, your thoughts. So we talked a lot of topics. I want to go back to the main question of, so we were challenging the thought of these people that have established good leadership background, had success in the past, and now we're just moving towards movements that are heavy culture, heavy people. Any closing remarks, things you would want to say to coaches or leaders? What are your last remarks after this?
Lead with empathy, because I've been middle manager. I've been in many different spots, and if we lead with empathy and try to understand the entire system, the environment that people are existing in, it will give us better insight to be better coaches. And when I say coach, I mean a legit coach, not a process guru, because change comes from within the organization. So we have to be real coaches and bring the change out of people, help people bring the change out from inside themselves. I don't care what Chris Herman says. I think Leff had some fantastic points tonight. So I thumbs up, Leff. I'm with you, brother.
So Leff, good segue. Leff, any closing remarks?
Yeah, no, I think we're all hitting on to me, something that's near and dear, and something that really resonated with me tonight was with something that Mike had said. There's just a love fest going on tonight. But, the word agile, it's something I don't use a lot either. So I think if we focus on human systems and preparing people to deal with change and be able to navigate, and if we become, tour guides and not travel agents, how do we inspire that type of leadership culture? So I really like that whole mindset of Agile doesn't solve anything, right? It really doesn't. How do we build better people to work in an Agile way, or be more susceptible to dealing with change differently than CYA and heavy project management and rag status, races. I need a description so I can do exactly what I'm told and not really do anything additional because I'm going to get my head bit off. So I love that thinking, Mike. That really just, I don't know, I'm totally marinating in that comment. So this has been a great topic, though. I love this human systems approach to things.
I really like that phrase, by the way. How do we become tour guides and not try that?
Yeah, I just wrote it down. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my coach and mentor. I will give him a shout out. Travis Reed said that to me, and it stuck with me forever. It's one of the many fine sprinklings. He's one of the best coaches I've ever worked with or been around. So I have to give him a plug there.
Awesome. Jay, closing remarks.
So I'm going to go in a little bit different direction. I'm going to go in the direction of addressing, I'm sure we have some leaders actually listening to this. And to leaders who are listening to this who maybe take umbrage with some of the stuff we've said or think that these people are being unrealistic, they're being too mean, I would say this. Everyone who has made the pivot or made the change to being more comfortable in an iterative way of working and realizing that may be beneficial. Nobody was born into this, right? Nobody came out of the womb and was just an agilist. You had to learn, and you had to, somebody somewhere in their journey experienced a fork in the road where they went to the path less traveled, and that's where they ended up where they ended up. So if you find yourself really wondering, don't take offense to what we've said, because everybody has to find that change themselves. They have to find that door, see it, and then walk through it. So if anything, if you're listening and you're aggravated or frustrated, or whatever, it's these guys don't get it. These guys don't get it. Maybe put yourself in our shoes and maybe think about, maybe you just haven't been presented with the right door to walk through yet. Because I don't believe anyone is beyond redemption. I don't believe anyone is beyond change, unless you're dead. And even then, well, realistically, once you die, you could be put in an incinerator, and that does change, whatever. But I think that nobody is beyond change, and I think that if anything, it's just it's an unmet opportunity. Unnoticed opportunity is what it really all comes down to. Org change, personal change, development, whatever. And there's nothing sadder in the world than untapped potential.
Well said. Yeah. So I think my closing remarks, honestly, nothing much to add other than very interesting topic that obviously the culture side of this is always a lot of, we have some great, brilliant consultants on the call here. So the it depends will always come up with variables and what we're going through and what is at stake. But I think at the end of the day, we all align that there's definitely some room to improve leadership. This is just one thing to take in, to digest in your very complex world of things going on, where to Jay's point, this is just information that should help you and help others and other team members. And the only thing I can stress is what, this is not going away, and it's only going to get weirder, more complex, and more things will come. And Mike and Leff, you saying that Agile's not really even a thing you use anymore, it's already started, right? It's already happening. Some things are already coming up the pipe. So I'm excited to see where this goes. So I'll pass it back over to Jay. Jay, you want to close us out?
Sure. So first I want to thank John for coming up with this great topic and for doing all the homework. He put together the agenda. He put together the legwork. So thank you, John, for coming up with such a great idea. And while I'm on that topic, I want to open it up to all of our listeners, all of our Discord commenters, everyone who's active in the community. If you've got an idea, reach out to us. We'd love to. We don't want to do it. This is, it's for all of us. It should not just be only the board members coming up with ideas. So if you got something, come forward. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a review, rating, leave us a comment. iTunes, Stitcher, I believe we're on now Audible, Amazon Podcasts as well, Spotify. It does help others find us. If you'd like to join the discussion, like I said, we have a very, very vibrant Discord community. We have quite a few people commenting, quite the international footprint, I must say. So if you're looking for more conversation, looking to learn, or just even get in on a dialogue, find us on Discord. We do have a Patreon site, which I will throw in the show notes. Again, we always provide this as free, but if you like what you hear and you want to throw a couple bucks every month to offset hosting and production costs, feel free to. You might get a surprise in the mail. And last but not least, I think I need to throw out a generous shout out and thank you to Chris at Machine Man Records and his artist Krebs, who provided our wonderful outro music. We now have official outro music that is not, copyright free. So I want to thank both Chris and Krebs for sending it over to us. That was really, really nice of them. So check them out on Bandcamp. I'll throw a bunch of links in the show notes. Once again, thank you, John. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Leff. And until next time, this is the Agile Uprising Podcast, signing out.
Wear a mask.